However, I do have a student coming in here in, I don't know, 20-something minutes. So I'm going to prepare my day, get all warmed up, and answer a couple questions if you have them. If you do, throw them in the comments section. I would love to hear them. Music Mondays is basically here so we could just watch what a normal established idea is. Plus there's a couple thousand people on the channel. If they got nothing going on, sometimes this would be a good interaction point. Not sure what time it is where you are, but where I am, it's about 9:24 in Hawaii. Hawaii on the big island. So this channel, basically what I'm just doing is sharing a little bit about what I do, music, teaching, instruction, and then my process of learning from other instructors. I find that the process of learning just really doesn't stop no matter what you're doing in life. So what I try to do is cater that concept and bring in my students, their little personalities, if they're small, you know, because they're still growing and developing. And then if somebody who's an old dog who doesn't want to learn new tricks, looks a little brown, not so great. I'm getting old, folks. Anyway, you can teach an old dog new tricks. That's, you know, horrible colloquialisms. There's absolutely a bunch of stuff that you can learn rhythm-wise and just hearing notes and being able to hear intervals. So one of the things I'm going to be focusing on Music Mondays a little bit more than just how I set up the room and how I talk to those folks about, you know, if you play a stringed instrument or anything that has a note structures, whether it's chromatic or diatonic, monotonal, polytonal, something that you could practice hearing what and be able to go 1 2 1 3 1 4 1 5. Hearing those intervals is really cool because when you could hear 1 2 3 4 5, get rid of your 2 and 4, which are susses. Keep your 1 3 5. You could add a 7th, and you could basically manipulate those triads or those chords that you already know. What I do on a very beginner level is I show people chords and how not to get overwhelmed with just chords that have 3 fingers, like a D major. You could also play it with 2 fingers like that. If you throw down 2 more fingers, it makes what you would see a C, but at the 2nd fret is a D major on a guitar. Same thing works for the mandolin. If you're playing a G major and you play it with your 2nd finger and 3rd finger, you could then scoot that up and then bar that whole 1st fret for a G sharp major. The concept of strings is great because once you realize that the point between the nut and the bridge is a defined portion. If you cut it in half, you get an octave, which is always going to be 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 minor seconds to the resolution of a chromatic scale. And then if we're using something that we all learn in the beginning, do re mi fa sol la ti do, that's just a diatonic scale using 7 notes and an 8th one, which is the same as the 1st. Putting it in context, knowing that you're playing something like a C D E F G A B C and then going up C sharp, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B sharp, C sharp, D, D, E, F sharp, G, A, B, C sharp, D. You can throw the accidentals, the sharps or the flats, to signify you know the difference between natural notes or not. And the whole process of learning that comes from learning intervals on your instrument and then learning them in patterns. The most patterns we generally think of, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. But if you spend 2 weeks just playing patterns of 3, 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3 1 2 3, say you switch it up and you do 4 5 6, 1 2 3 4 5 6, 4 5 6 4 5 6 4 5 6, you will get really good at playing those intervals when you're playing just the normal chord progression. Do 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 progression. Do 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 do. And when you put it into practical application, what happens is you start exploring your fretboard or your piano or your voice. And it leads to being able to have a little bit more understanding and cohesion between what you're physically doing and then what you're trying to hear. So for me, what I do is I teach most of my students in the beginning how to tune their instruments, which is always also a valid awesome idea. When I get to a point where they're understanding that we're on the same page. We develop somewhat of a communication, learning the vocabulary that it takes just to be able to get past certain humps in what we do. It takes form by starting to talk about notes, harmonies, and then triads. When we manipulate the 4 types of triads, major, minor, diminished, and then augmented, we get an assortment of different keys and tones that we can play with. But the understanding comes from this. It's lots of fun to play an instrument and be able to play the songs that you know. But if you dissect the songs you know, your understanding of that becomes a little bit greater. You don't need to know that when you're playing Wonderwall what chord you're playing, just as long as your fingers do there and you're having fun. The idea of what I teach for my first episode, or my first lesson, or my first session with a student, as today I'm going to be having I think a ukulele student. She's been playing for many, many years. And, you know, whether you're teaching or you're enlightening or you're trying to just do explanations, the strings on a ukulele are the same. People have the same sort of ideas. And when you see something new, you sometimes throw those concepts into whatever you're doing. I know that learning Blackbird on the guitar really helped with doing fingerstyle on a ukulele. The major hump was getting over the high G for me. Other than that, knowing the chords and knowing how to move flawlessly between those and pick the chords you want to hear was really kind of like a challenge in the beginning. And what happens is when you play every chord and you know what a C major 7, C dominant 7 is, C6, when you go through the gamut of knowing what those chords are, you can start utilizing those in other chords, which we aforementioned is just moving up the fretboard. So if I took that same bar, went up to the 5th fret and put my pinky down on the 8th fret, I would have the same feeling I had when I played just that C. So what I do for my second episode, since the first one, or the first lesson that I do is called spider exercises, first finger on your plucking hand, and then the first finger, second finger, third finger, fourth finger, fall in line for each fret. If you can go about at this speed and then put one finger up at a time, moving one, playing just that note, and then expand yourself. Once you get good with the first finger, move to the second finger. When you get to that second finger and you're able to fly flawlessly between here, go back to the first finger and throw in double plucks. Pluck, 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 pluck. These serve as 8th notes rather than just a single note, which is considered a quarter in 4/4. So when we have these double notes, we're actually figuring out how to hear those notes. This is a great way to teach ideas of tempo and melody without the student or myself actually participating in the function, because when you change the BPM, it changes the amount of notes you put into that single measure. Therefore, if you take that same concept to the second session lesson, it's a teeter-totter, we would have like a G on the ukulele or a D on the guitar. I would take off my first finger from the note that I'm currently playing down. On the ukulele, that's a D note, 2nd fret on the thickest string, the C string. 2nd fret, boom, first finger, 2nd finger bookends all the way up top onto the 2nd fret of the A string to get an A, B flat or A sharp, B, boom, boom, those two of them. And then between those two bookends, there's an open string. Throw that 3rd finger, just wrap it around on that 3rd fret on the E string. E, F, F sharp, G. When all those are together, we play that G, that's closest to your nose, that string, open. That gives a G major. I'm simply suggesting with the teeter-totters to play on the 1 and then switch on the and of 1 whilst keeping this hand in rhythm. So it would feel like this. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Notice how we're playing just on the 1, but we're keeping this hand rocking in quarters. Something like that. And then what happens is if you are counting 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you can easily move from that 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 by switching that chord, picking up your first finger, putting that 2nd finger where that first finger was, taking the 3rd finger and putting it where that 2nd finger was, then bringing the pinky onto the fretboard. When we do this, we get the same exact chord, except I'm not going to keep my finger pointing off into Nowheresville. When we can move these like this intermittently, we can play the same chord with different functionality. C major, C major, C major, C major, A major, A major, A major. The reason why we do these, F major, F major, F major, oh, dare I say F major. The reason why we do that is we want to functionally move this up and bar, B-A-R-R-E, to make an F sharp, a G, G sharp, A, B flat, B. When we go up the fretboard, we can call them sharps, and when we go back down, we can call them flats. But the fact remains, if you can learn a basic set of chords, C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor, and then B diminished formed out of your dominant seventh, then you can definitely go through the process of moving that up the fretboard to play a C sharp major. You could play a D sharp minor, E sharp minor, which functionally they're all the same chords. You're just utilizing your first finger for a bar technique. That will conclude our online today. If you have any questions about this, put it in the comment section and I will get back to you. Mahalo and aloha.